Hey hunters, skull and crossbones emoji, high voltage sign emoji, welcome back to Anime Fanfic Corner, the only channel on YouTube dedicated exclusively to HxH audiobooks. Today we're diving into another amazing fanfic, right pointing finger emoji, HxH, contractor, left pointing finger emoji. Big shout out to the original author, their info's in the description, so definitely show them some love. Blue heart emoji, quick heads up, I do intros, outros, and a few quick breaks now, just to keep things lively, and survive the Hunter Association's boring rules. Triumphant face emoji. Plus, I actually post memes, polls, and lore in the community tab, not just endless sub begging like some audiobook bots. Embarrassed smiley face emoji. If you love HxH chaos, say hi in the comments, hit like, and officially become a hunter. Brain emoji, also. Once again. 10+ hours to fix 122 chapters of this fanfic chapter by chapter. So, Chapter 1. The calm night was shattered by deafening thunder that rolled across the sky. A light rain fell steadily. I saw a young man, covered in blood, running through the street with a middle-aged man in his arms. Each step he took sent a ripple through the shallow puddles on the ground. Damn it. What the hell is going on today? Not a single car in sight. Damn it. Beep beep. Suddenly, the sound of a horn echoed from a distance. In the distance, a crane was at work, and a row of warning signs lined the roadside. As soon as Reo saw this, he understood what was happening. Of all times, you decide to close the road now. Helpless, he had no choice but to keep running in the direction of the hospital. But perhaps the heavens saw how desperately Reo was running, and were moved. A car approached from behind and honked twice. Beep. Beep. Hey, handsome. You in a hurry? Hop in, I'm in a good mood today, I'll give you a lift. Reo didn't have time to look at the woman's face. He hurriedly opened the back door and got in with his father. Miss, please, drive. Take me to the nearest hospital. Please. Hearing this, the young woman grinned and laughed. You're rushing your little sister? I'm not that old or that kind. Buckle up. Reo could only watch the scenery blur past the window as they sped through the streets. He didn't know how long it took. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. He hadn't even noticed that the blood from his body had soaked into the seat beneath him. When Reo snapped back to his senses, the car was parked in front of the hospital's emergency entrance. Without taking time to thank her, he flung the door open, picked up his father, and rushed toward the ER. The moment the young woman heard the door slam shut, she looked back, but the young man was already gone. All that remained was the blood-soaked seat. She pouted, but the corners of her mouth curled upward. Cute guy. Then she drove off, leaving only the roar of the engine behind. Meanwhile, Reo carried his father through the hospital, looking frantically for a doctor. When the on-duty staff saw Reo, soaked in blood, they were stunned. Several doctors were quickly summoned to examine both Reo and his father. But when they saw the horrifying condition Reo was in, they instinctively crowded around him first. Don't worry about me. Hurry. Look at my father. Eventually, Reo watched as several doctors pushed his father into a room for testing. He could only sit on a bench outside and wait. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened. Reo jumped up and rushed over to the two doctors who stepped out. Doctor. My father, how is he? The two doctors exchanged a glance. Finally, the one Reo had seen earlier spoke up. Based on your account, the patient seems to have undergone severe psychological trauma, correct? Reo quickly nodded. The doctor paused and thought for a moment before explaining. From our examination, it appears that your father experienced a profound shock that compressed key neural pathways in his brain. His perception of the outside world has been. Reo blinked, struggling to understand. Doctor, what does that mean? What are you saying? This time, the doctor laid it out plainly. Medically speaking, your father has lost all cognitive awareness. There's no sign of voluntary body movement. Only a few involuntary nerve reflexes remain. His body can still metabolize food and energy, but in layman's terms, he's become a vegetative patient. We'll assign him a bed for now. Go to the front desk and handle the payment. The rest will be taken care of once full staffing resumes tomorrow. Reo didn't know how he left the hospital. The doctor's words echoed endlessly in his mind. He wasn't even aware he'd walked into the middle of the street. A large truck barreled toward him. From the look on the driver's face, he had clearly seen Reo, but it was too late to brake. The impact came with a scream frozen on the driver's panicked face. He slammed the brakes and pulled over. But when he rushed out of the truck, there was no body, only a pool of blood on the wet road. Eventually, the driver drove away. Unfortunately, the heavy rain that day had disabled the security camera. And just like that, Reo's blood was washed away by the storm. Chapter 2. Where am I? Reo's last memory was of a truck barreling toward him, then, nothing. When he awoke again, he found himself lying unharmed in the middle of a forest. The sight startled him at first, but once the shock faded, his instincts kicked in. He needed to leave this place as soon as possible. He had no idea where he was. The forest was unfamiliar and could easily be home to dangerous beasts. If something attacked him now, he wasn't sure he'd make it out alive. So, Reo instinctively adjusted his body, remaining alert and ready to react at any moment. He walked for what felt like hours. Hunger eventually gnawed at his stomach, and he realized he'd need food if he hoped to have enough energy to escape this forest. After setting a trap, Reo managed to catch and kill a rabbit. But just as he did, something strange happened. A mysterious book appeared in his hands, emitting a faint black mist that swirled along its cover like flowing smoke. The book opened itself to the first page, revealing an image of a rabbit, lifelike and eerily vivid. Curious, Reo reached out and touched the picture. The moment his fingers made contact, he felt a sudden change, his senses sharpened. He couldn't tell if it was real or just his imagination, but everything around him seemed clearer, more alive. After preparing and eating the rabbit, Reo pressed forward, moving steadily toward what he hoped was the forest's edge. Surprisingly, he encountered no threats on the way out. By that afternoon, he had finally emerged from the woods and spotted a small town nearby. It wasn't large, just a few thousand people, by his estimate. 10 days later. In the days that followed, Reo gathered as much information as he could. The town he found was located on a small island called Whale Island, so named because of its resemblance to a whale. Once he learned that, it all clicked. He was in the world of hunters. The date was January 1, 1999. He didn't know the full timeline of the series by heart, but when he saw the protagonist Gon catch a giant fish at noon and skip happily toward town, Reo knew. The story had begun. The past 10 days hadn't gone to waste. Reo had spent a couple of days loitering around the port and managed to scrape together 1 million rings. It sounded like a lot, but it didn't go far. Just a single bottle of water cost him 150 rings. Judging by the exchange rate, it was roughly 50 to 1 compared to Chinese currency. Prices for basic necessities fluctuated as well. Once he had solved his immediate survival needs, Reo turned his attention back to the strange book. He remembered, the book had only appeared after he killed that rabbit. To test it, he bought a live fish from the dock and killed it with a stick. Sure enough, the book appeared again in his hands. After repeated experiments, Reo started to understand how the book worked. It was called Notes of the Covenanter. So far, it had only shown one ability. Whenever Reo killed a living creature, the book automatically formed a contract with its soul. Then, it allowed Reo to choose one ability from that creature. From the rabbit, he had acquired a talent for heightened sensitivity. Over the next 2 days, Reo hunted more animals in the forest, forming contracts and selling their meat back at the port to earn some money on the side. He hadn't unlocked the book's full potential yet, but he didn't believe something like the Covenanter's Notes could be that simple. He'd just have to dig deeper, over time. 2 days later, Reo spotted Gon at the port, accompanied by a middle-aged man in a suit. He silently turned away, paid 100,000 rings, and boarded the ship docked behind them. Once aboard, Reo found a hidden spot where he could sit unnoticed. From there, he watched as Gon stood at the edge of the deck, waving goodbye to the people below. In the past, Reo might have smiled at the scene, admiring Gon's energy. But after everything he'd been through, something in him had changed. Now, he found Gon's cheerfulness a bit grating. All he wanted was for things to be quiet for a while. But this wasn't the time to show himself. With that, Reo closed his eyes, lowered his heart rate, and began to rest, saving what energy he could. He didn't know how long he'd slept, but eventually, the sound of panic stirred him. He looked toward the deck. The sky, once clear, had turned an ominous gray. Thunder rumbled overhead. The calm ocean churned, and the ship began rocking violently on the waves. Screams rang out from those on board, caught off guard by the sudden storm. But for Reo, this was nothing. The chaos outside didn't faze him. What did get him to his feet was something far more mundane, his stomach. The hunger was back. So, he made his way to the cabin, hoping to find something, anything, to eat. Chapter 3. When Reo walked into the cabin, he found a few people already inside. Unlike the chaos on deck, they seemed completely unbothered. One of them, a blond young man, was lounging in a hanging chair, dressed in an outfit with distinct national flair. He held a book in his hands, reading quietly. Reo figured this must be Kurapika. Nearby sat a man who looked like a middle-aged uncle, casually munching on an apple. But Reo knew better, this guy was actually only 18. That contrast had always stuck with Reo. Finally, there was a cheerful-looking boy with a sunny smile, helping a fellow passenger drink some water. He noticed Reo entering the cabin and greeted him brightly. "Hello. I remember you. I smelled you back in the forest on Whale Island." Rio's mouth twitched. He had made a conscious effort to avoid contact, yet this kid still managed to find him by scent. He really was the chosen one of this world. Since there was no point in hiding anymore, Reo abandoned his plan to stay out of the protagonist's orbit. "Yeah, hi. I saw you fishing on Whale Island," Reo replied casually. Gon just smiled, unfazed. At that moment, a figure appeared in the doorway. Reo and the others turned their attention to see an older man, clearly the ship's captain, leaning against the doorframe with a bottle of wine in hand. Reo thought to himself, this must be the first test of the hunter exam. As expected, the old man invited the four of them into the cockpit. His cloudy eyes scanned the group before he spoke. "I'm the captain of this ship. Just call me Mr. Captain. From what I've seen, the four of you have held up well so far. All right, give me your names." Reo rolled his eyes. Anyone with common sense knew not to give away their real names so easily. If it weren't for the fact that this guy was part of the exam's early screening process, Reo might have considered decking him just for the nerve. But Gon, ever the trusting kid, answered without hesitation. "My name is Gon Freaks." Hearing that, Kurapika sat up in the hammock and spoke in a calm, almost androgynous voice. "I'm Kurapika." Leorio, clearly annoyed but unwilling to be left out, reluctantly followed suit. "My name's Leorio." That left Reo. With 3 names already shared, all eyes turned to him. "Reo," he said simply. The captain nodded, repeating each of their names under his breath before continuing. "All right then. What's your reason for taking the hunter exam?" No one answered immediately. But Leorio, already on edge, couldn't stay quiet much longer. To him, this was just a boat ride. Why was this old man asking so many questions? Before he could explode, Gon spoke up again. My father was a hunter. I want to understand what makes this job so fascinating that he would choose it over staying with his family. Reo, uninterested in the back and forth, cut in abruptly. I'm here to gain more power. With that, Reo turned and headed for the door. The room was getting crowded with sentiment and pointless bickering. He preferred the open air. Hey! Wait! Who told you could interrupt me? Hey! Leorio shouted after him, clearly agitated. Reo didn't even glance back as he walked out. But apparently, Leorio's pride couldn't handle being dismissed so easily. He stormed out after Reo. Reo turned to face him on the deck, eyes calm. What? You want to throw hands? Of course I do. You can't just cut me off and walk out like that, it's rude, don't you think? Reo nodded, as if confirming something to himself. All right, fine. I just wanted to pass the hunter exam quietly. I was in the wrong for cutting in. Since you insist, let's go a few rounds. He knew it was overkill to fight someone like Leorio, given the power gap. But it was also the perfect chance to gauge the average strength level in this world. Chapter 4. Boom. The rain kept falling from the sky, like a silent weeping, as thunder flashed overhead, its light illuminating the faces of the two figures standing on the deck. Reo and Leorio faced each other, and moved at the same moment. Leorio charged forward, closing the distance fast, while Reo stood calmly in place, shifting into a Tai Chi stance. His dark eyes locked onto Leorio, tracking every movement. In Rio's vision, Leorio's rapid sprint gradually slowed down. Rio's heightened sensitivity made everything clearer, his opponent's speed and strength, the shifting of his center of gravity, the tension in his arms. Nothing escaped his notice. As the short knife in Leorio's hand stabbed toward him, Rio's arms moved in a blur, intercepting the strike with a flurry of palm techniques. His hands sliced through the air so fast they left faint white arcs in their wake. Leorio staggered back slightly, surprised. He hadn't expected his attack to be deflected so effortlessly. And in that moment of hesitation, Reo accelerated. He closed the distance in an instant, appearing right in front of Leorio. So fast. Leorio's pupils shrank. He instinctively tried to retreat, but before he could move, Rio's hand was already at his throat. Gah! Leorio swallowed hard, frozen in place. He took a shaky step back. Reo stared at the rattled Leorio, then turned to leave. But just as he began to walk away, something made him stop. A memory flickered in his mind, something his father once taught him. He hesitated. Then turned back and extended his hand toward Leorio. Reo wasn't quite sure why he did it. Maybe it was the weight of his recent loss. Maybe it was the bottled-up frustration and grief he hadn't been able to let go of. But in that brief fight, something inside him had shifted. The heaviness wasn't gone, but it had lightened, if only a little. Leorio stared at the hand in front of him, the same hand that had just nearly knocked him out. He looked up at Rio's calm, unreadable face. And slowly smiled. Then he reached out and shook it. Reo gave a small nod. Let's start over. I'm Reo. Leorio adjusted his glasses with one finger, still smirking. Leorio. Just Leorio's fine. They weren't exactly friends, not yet, but after that fight, they understood each other a little better. And in this world, that was enough. Leorio, starting to warm up to Reo, decided to introduce him to Gon later. Boom. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning split the sky and struck the ship's main mast. A crew member who had been working up there was caught completely off guard. Panicked, the man lost his grip, and fell. He was heading straight for the turbulent sea. If no one caught him in time, he wouldn't survive. Leorio, reacting on instinct, dashed toward the falling crew member. But he wasn't fast enough. The man was going to hit the water. Reo moved. As the rain struck the shallow puddles on the deck, a ripple spread out beneath his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished. The next second, he reappeared, holding the crew member in his arms. The man looked stunned but alive. Once back on deck, the crew member stumbled to his feet, still dazed, and managed to stammer a few words of thanks to both of them. Reo simply waved it off. Drenched and cold, he peeled off his soaked shirt and headed toward the cabin. There was no point staying on the rain-soaked deck any longer. As he walked inside, he spotted the old captain watching him with a grin. "You're all qualified," the man said with a nod. "I'll take you to the next island." With that, he turned and walked toward the captain's quarters, likely to report the names of the 4 who had passed his test. Chapter 5. The next day. The ship docked at the port of Doré, and the captain waved the candidates off. Reo and the others disembarked under the captain's guidance, heading in the direction he pointed. Because of their earlier encounters, Rio's relationship with Gon and Leorio had grown more familiar. Kurapika, though more reserved, had also warmed up to them, largely thanks to Gon's efforts. The captain pointed toward a hill behind the city, where a tall cedar tree stood prominently against the sky. He explained that this path was a shortcut to the hunter exam venue. However, once the group reached a bus stop sign, tensions began to rise. "I'm telling you, there's a bus that goes straight to the venue. Why won't you just come with me?" Leorio insisted, pointing at the sign. Kurapika and Gon, however, preferred to trust the captain's directions and take the path toward the cedar. "The captain clearly showed us the way," Kurapika argued. "Taking the bus could be a waste of time." "Calm down, let's not argue," Gon said, trying to mediate before things got physical. The disagreement continued until they turned to Reo, asking for his opinion. Although Reo didn't recall every detail of the plot, he did remember the correct route, and it wasn't the bus. So he sided with Kurapika and Gon. Leorio saw that he was outvoted 3-1, and reluctantly gave in. The group proceeded on foot toward the cedar. Because everyone was finally in agreement, their pace quickened. After walking for nearly 2 hours, they reached the halfway point of the mountain path. To their surprise, a small town appeared along the route. It looked abandoned and eerie, no people, no signs of life. Still, the path ran directly through it, so they had no choice but to walk through the center of town. Just as they reached the heart of the village, a nearby door creaked open. From it emerged a strange group dressed in white, all wearing masks. Leading them was an old woman whose teeth looked ready to fall out at any moment. She kept mumbling to herself with her eyes half shut. So thrilling. Tense and exciting. Reo stared at her, puzzled, wondering if she was about to choke on her own saliva. Then, without warning, she snapped to attention and shouted. "It's time for a thrilling 2-choice question." Everyone tensed. They had expected a fight, not a quiz. The old woman continued. "You 4 are candidates here to take the Hunter exam. I've been hired by the Hunter Association to evaluate whether you're qualified to proceed. Here's my test. You'll face a series of thrilling 2-choice questions. You must choose your answer within 5 seconds. If you answer incorrectly or refuse to answer, all of you will be disqualified and barred from taking the Hunter exam." Reo remembered this scene. He already knew the correct answer. So, he said nothing. Leorio, however, was already annoyed. "Hey! If one of them gets the answer wrong, we all get eliminated." Reo remained silent, internally sighing at Leorio's loudmouth tendencies. Kurapika let out a dry remark. "Not impossible. But your odds of choosing wrong are so high, I could cry." Gon stayed quiet, clearly distressed. Then the old woman announced the question. "Your son and daughter have been kidnapped at the same time. You can only save one. Who do you save, your son or your daughter? You have 5 seconds to decide." "Damn it. This isn't even a real question." Leorio growled. 5. Leorio turned around, eyes darting as he searched for something to use. 4. He spotted a wooden stick conveniently left in the corner. 3. He picked it up and swung it a few times, warming up. 2. Leorio stormed toward the old woman. 1. Leorio raised the stick, ready to strike. Snap. Reo caught the stick mid-swing, just before it could connect with the old woman's head. Reo, let go. This crazy old bat's messing with us, Leorio shouted, struggling. Relax, Leorio. The answer was silence, Reo said calmly, still holding the stick. We passed? Just like that. Leorio blinked, stunned. Kurapika, clearly exasperated, stepped forward to explain. The only correct answer was silence. As you said earlier, there's no good answer. Choosing either option results in loss. So saying nothing is the best response. Leorio stood quietly for a moment. Then, lowering the stick, he turned to the old woman. Ma'am. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to hit you. But the old woman just laughed. That's exactly why I chose to be an examiner. To meet people like you. With that, the white-masked people behind her opened a wooden door. From here, walk for about 2 more hours, she said. You'll reach the giant cedar tree. There, a guide will take you to the official exam site. Chapter 6. After saying goodbye to the old woman, Reo and the others followed the winding path through the forest. Eventually, they arrived at a large lake, where small boats were docked. As they rowed across, a monster suddenly appeared from beneath the surface, but Leorio, paddling with surprising strength, managed to get their boat to shore quickly. Once they landed, the group continued toward the massive cedar tree in the distance. The birdsong along the trail made the walk feel less lonely. They didn't know how long they'd been walking, but eventually, they reached the base of the enormous cedar and spotted a small wooden house nearby. It was likely the home of the guide the old lady had mentioned. But when they opened the door, they were met with a strange sight. A massive humanoid fox, standing upright, was holding a woman in its arms. The moment it saw them, it darted outside with the woman in tow. Reo immediately recognized the setup. This was another test. The fox was part of it. But since it was meant to be a trial, he stayed quiet, pretending not to know what was really going on. Inside the hut, Leorio tended to an injured man they had found. When he realized they were low on medicinal herbs, he volunteered to search for more and asked Reo to keep an eye on the patient. Once Leorio left, Reo dropped the act. All right, enough pretending, Fox. I figured you out the moment I walked in, he said. You're not a victim, you lured my companions away so we'd be separated. The fox, startled, stared at Reo in disbelief. Unsure of how he'd been found out, he nonetheless reverted to his original form and lunged at him. Humph. Since you know, there's no point in hiding anymore. You little brat, die? But to Reo, the fox moved in slow motion. He smirked, didn't even bother using Tai Chi, crouched slightly, and launched a clean hook punch straight into the fox's gut. Ugh. The fox's green eyes widened in shock, his face frozen in disbelief as he stumbled backward and collapsed. TCH. Still can't figure out where my power level ranks in this world, Reo muttered, annoyed. Ever since arriving in this world, he'd wanted to gauge his strength relative to others, but none of his opponents had been strong enough to give him a real challenge. With the fox unconscious on the floor, Reo sighed and dropped onto the couch, deciding to wait for the others to return rather than go looking for them. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, Gon and the others were dealing with their own version of the trial. Gon had quickly caught on to something strange. Their supposed attacker looked nothing like the one from before. Even the voice was different. Your face isn't the same, Gon said. And your voice is higher and thinner. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Fox laughed and called out to her husband. Her husband, who had been hiding nearby, stepped out, grinning from ear to ear. No one's managed to tell us apart in years. I'm impressed. With the trick revealed, everyone relaxed and exchanged introductions. Spirits were high as they prepared to move on. "We'll take you to the hunter exam site," said Mr. Fox with a grin. "Ha ha. That's great." Leorio cheered. But just as the group was about to move out, Kurapika suddenly paused. "Wait a second. Isn't someone missing?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "Where's Reo?" "We completely forgot," everyone shouted in unison. Chapter 7. The next day, Reo and the others were carried swiftly by their guide, a magical beast in disguise, to the hunter exam site, located in Zaban City. Because the guide was a magical beast by nature, he took the form of a human, disguised as the fox husband, to avoid causing public panic during their walk through the city. As they made their way through the bustling streets and towering buildings of Zaban City, Reo, Kurapika, and Leorio weren't particularly fazed. They'd seen cities like this before. But Gon, born and raised on the remote Whale Island, was in awe. This was his first time outside the island, and the sheer scale and liveliness of Zaban left him marveling at every corner. Noticing Gon's childlike wonder, Reo and the others slowed their pace to walk beside him. The group chatted casually as they followed the guide toward the exam venue. 1 hour later, they stopped in front of a towering skyscraper. Gon and Leorio stared up at it in awe. "Whoa! This is the hunter exam venue? It looks amazing," Leorio exclaimed. "Inside are challengers from all over the world," Kurapika added. "All hoping to become hunters." The two immediately rushed toward the building's entrance. But the guide called out, pointing elsewhere. "Hey! This way, this is the real hunter exam venue," he said, gesturing to a small, unassuming steakhouse tucked beside the skyscraper. "No way. That can't be it." Leorio looked crushed. "How could the hunter exam be in such a shabby little restaurant? That's ridiculous. Hunting. And this is the place?" Gon echoed, eyes wide. "This is what my dad was chasing after all this time." Reo covered his forehead in disbelief. He never realized how ridiculous the scene felt until experiencing it firsthand. Seeing the two flounder like that made him sigh deeply. Without a word, he walked over and grabbed both Gon and Leorio, dragging them toward the restaurant. People nearby were already giving them strange looks. All right, let's just go in." For all we know, the Hunter Association picked a place like this to filter out people who don't know what they're doing. The guide turned to Reo, nodding with approval. "My son said you were observant. Seeing you in person, I believe it now," he said. "Ordinary people would never suspect that the hunter exam is held inside an average steakhouse like this." With that, he led the group through the front entrance. "Welcome," the chef said, not even looking up from the grill. The fox guide stepped forward and gave the coded phrase. "Is there still an empty room inside?" At that, the chef raised his head and looked over at the group. "What would you like, guests?" he asked, eyes narrowing slightly. The fox's expression sharpened. "A steak set for 4. At those words, the atmosphere subtly shifted. The chef's posture straightened. "A steak set for 4. How would you like it?" The fox guide gave the final code. "Cook it together with the others. Make sure it's well done." The chef gave a curt nod and waved them through. "All right. Right this way, guests." As they stepped into the back room, Gon clutched his stomach. "I've never had steak before. That whole code thing just made me really hungry." The guide chuckled. "You newcomers did well to even find the venue on your first try. You've got potential. Don't worry, next year, I'll bring you back here too." He turned and headed for the door. "Wait, Mr. Fox." The guide paused, turning around to see Gon walking up to him. Gon reached out his hand, beaming. He thanked you for bringing us all the way here." The fox was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and grasped Gon's hand firmly. After a moment, he turned and left. From the hallway behind him, his voice echoed faintly. "And thank you, Gon. This is the second time in 10 years someone's thanked us." Chapter 8. Reo and Gon stood inside a massive underground hall. Judging by the number plates pinned to their chests, more than 400 people had already arrived before them. As soon as the group of 4 exited the elevator, a green-skinned man named Beans handed each of them a number tag. These tags marked their official entry into the Hunter exam. Their numbers were: Number 403, Leorio. Number 404, Kurapika. Number 405, Gon. Number 406, Reo. Reo glanced down at the number badge on his chest, tugged at it, and muttered under his breath. This feels like some kind of beauty pageant tag from my last life. Way too awkward. Once they had secured their tags, the 4 finally had time to take in their surroundings. All around them, other examinees, hundreds of them, were staring at the group with a mix of curiosity and cold calculation. The intensity of those gazes made it feel like they were being marked for elimination before the exam had even begun. "They're staring like they want to eat us alive," Leorio muttered, finally picking up on the palpable tension. No kidding, Reo thought. Took him long enough. No. I think they're just curious, Gon said optimistically. "Watch, I'll go say hi." He stepped forward toward a nearby participant. "Hi there. Everyone seems kinda tense. Is something wrong?" The man stared at Gon with an icy glare, then walked away without a word. Gon returned awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. "Okay, maybe they're not as friendly as I thought." Reo watched Gon shuffle back and found himself wondering how this wide-eyed kid would one day become so powerful. Still, he offered a little advice. "Gon, most of the people here are hoping to become professional hunters. From their perspective, every additional candidate is one more competitor, one more obstacle in the way. Their hostility makes sense. It's the growl of a cornered mutt, or, if you want to be generous, the frustration of the weak." Before Gon could respond, a squat, stocky man suddenly popped up beside them. "Exactly right, little brother," he said with a wide grin. "All these people want to be hunters, and your arrival just lowered their odds." He gave a mock shrug. "But don't worry about them. Name's Tunpa, and yeah, you guessed it. I've taken the Hunter exam 35 times. The group blinked. 35? Leorio and Gon gasped in unison. Kurapika narrowed his eyes and gave Reo a quick look, signaling caution. Reo, picking up on it, nodded subtly, then turned to Tunpa with a polite smile. "Wow, 35 times? That's impressive. With that kind of experience, I'm sure you know the field pretty well. Any chance you'd be willing to tell us about some of the more dangerous participants this year?" Reo had learned long ago, flattery was a great way to loosen lips. And Tunpa clearly enjoyed it. "Of course. Always happy to help newcomers," Tunpa beamed. He pointed at a large, muscular man off to the side. "Number 255, to do the wrestler. Strong body, solid grappling techniques, and explosive strength. Don't let his size fool you, he's fast and crafty. Definitely one of the tough ones." Next, Tunpa gestured at a man playing with snakes nearby. "Number 103, Snake Charmer Ponzu. That guy's dangerous, he fights using venomous snakes. Keep your distance if you can." Then he pointed to an older man standing quietly with a composed aura. "Number 191, Vadoro, a martial artist. Don't let his age fool you, he's incredibly skilled. Definitely not someone to underestimate." Finally, he pointed to a rugged-looking man dressed like a mountain hunter. "Number 384, Jaretta the Poacher. See that long tube on his back? It's a blowgun, and he specializes in poison darts. He's not above using underhanded tricks, so keep your guard up." Tunpa laughed a little and nodded toward a bald man nearby. "And that one over there? Claims he's from a ninja village. First time taking the exam, but who knows, maybe he's legit. Or maybe he's just delusional." The group listened carefully, filing away the information. Reo kept his expression neutral, but in the back of his mind, he knew better than to fully trust Tunpa. Experience wasn't the same as goodwill. Chapter 9. Tunpa, perhaps feeling a little parched after talking so much, pulled out a few cans of juice from his bag. He cracked one open for himself and handed the rest out to the group. "Hey, you all must be thirsty. I brought some juice just for the exam today. Help yourselves, my treat." Reo, always eager, stepped forward and spread his arms to intercept the cans on behalf of everyone. Perfect timing. "Thanks, Mr. Tunpa, I am feeling a little thirsty." Reo didn't say anything. He recognized this part of the exam. He already knew Tunpa was trying to sabotage them. Still, it would be best if the others figured that out on their own. No need to interfere yet. But what Reo didn't expect was, "Wow, this juice tastes great." "Thanks, Mr. Tunpa," Gon said cheerfully. After Reo passed the cans around, he took a big swig of his own and started giving commentary between gulps. "PFFT. Reo suddenly coughed, face scrunching up. "Mr. Tunpa, this juice might be expired or something, it tastes really off." "Ever the honest one," Gon nodded in agreement, oblivious to Leorio's awkward expression. Reo looked down at the half-finished can, sighed, and tossed it away. Whatever. He's a doctor, Reo thought. He can check himself later if he starts feeling weird. Turning his attention away from the group, Reo scanned the other examinees, mentally preparing himself for what was to come. Suddenly. "Ah! My arm!" A sharp, miserable cry echoed through the room. Reo and the others turned toward the source of the scream. A man had collapsed to his knees, crying out in agony. But the strangest part, the skin on his arm had turned to flower petals and was disintegrating into the air. One by one, the surrounding examinees who had been near the man stepped back cautiously, not wanting to get involved or suffer the same fate. "Oh, fascinating. Your arm just turned into petals and vanished." A voice, playful and melodic, came from the side. The group looked over and saw a man with clown-like makeup, watching the scene with rapt interest. His magnetic voice was calm and almost amused as he opened his arms wide in mock innocence. Seeing him, many of the nearby candidates instinctively backed away. "Oops, was that rude?" "I didn't do anything," though the man said, tilting his head with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Reo remained calm. He'd seen enough in his past life to not be fazed by theatrical displays. But Gon, Kurapika, and Reo were stunned, frozen in place with wide eyes. The bizarre sight clearly rattled them. Even Tunpa looked shaken, sweat forming on his brow as he muttered under his breath. "Damn. That dangerous guy showed up again this year. Someone's gonna get unlucky." Reo shot him a glance but didn't comment. Gon broke the silence, eyes still fixed on the man with clown makeup. "He's been here before? He's taken the hunter exam in the past?" Tunpa nodded grimly. "That's candidate number 44. They call him the magician, HxH. Last year, he could have passed easily, but when he didn't like the examiner in charge, he nearly beat the guy to death." "What? He beat up the examiner?" Reo asked, face pale. "And he's allowed to take the exam again this year?" Tunpa sighed. "Well, every year has a different examiner and different exam content. As long as the current examiner clears him, even someone like him can pass. That's the hunter exam for you. But if I were you, I'd keep my distance." "Seriously?" He shot the group a concerned look, as if offering sincere advice. If Reo hadn't already known Tunpa's true nature, he might have been fooled. Reo crossed his arms and added his own warning, gaze fixed on Gon. "Yeah, if you see him, stay far away. We're not ready to take him on yet. Especially you, Gon. I'm really worried you'll run headfirst into him if you get too fired up." He remembered all too well how many times Gon nearly died during the exam. If HxH hadn't taken an interest in him, Gon wouldn't have made it out alive. Chapter 10. Suddenly, Reo turned his head and struck Tunpa squarely in the gut with lightning-fast precision. The blow was so unexpected that Tunpa, who had been laughing and chatting with the group just a second ago, had no time to react and took the hit head-on. A flash of white light streaked through the air as Tunpa's rotund body was launched backward. Smack! He slammed into the wall with a heavy thud and collapsed, unconscious. "Hey! Reo, what are you doing?" Gon shouted, eyes wide. "Mr. Tunpa was just introducing us to other examinees a moment ago, why would you suddenly attack him?" To Reo's surprise, this was the first time Gon had ever questioned him so directly. Leorio looked like he wanted to say something too, but after a moment of hesitation, he kept quiet. Fortunately, Kurapika stepped in. "Calm down, Gon. We've all spent a few days with Reo by now, we know he's not the type to attack someone without reason. He must have figured something out." Gon glanced over at Reo, waiting for an explanation. Just as Reo was about to respond, a familiar figure from the manga appeared, a chubby man with glasses and a notebook, an enthusiastic info-gatherer known for obsessively documenting the Hunter exam. In a flash, the man appeared beside Reo and grabbed him by the neck. "Hey little brother. I hear you've done your homework on this year's examinees. Especially Tunpa. Mind sharing that info with my friends here?" Reo raised an eyebrow. This guy looked like a harmless nerd, but that grip was overly confident. Not that it mattered, he wasn't getting out of Rio's hold. With a calm expression, Reo reached up with his free hand and began slapping him repeatedly. Smack. Slap. Whop. Smack. After a short while, the man gave in, face red and swollen. Alright. Fine. I'll talk." He pulled out his notebook and read aloud with a forced, robotic smile. "Mr. Tunpa has been taking the Hunter exam since 1964. This year marks his 35th attempt. Out of those, he's qualified for the official stages 30 times. On paper, that's impressive, he's ranked first in total exam attempts. However, the man continued, records show Tunpa never actually completes the exam. He tends to get eliminated after sabotaging newcomers. Over the past few decades, most of the examinees who befriended him ended up dead during the test. Because of this, he's earned the nickname Rookie Killer." He flipped to another page. Data also shows that many of those rookies consumed drinks or food given by Tunpa prior to falling ill, most commonly suffering from severe diarrhea that left them unable to continue, or even led to death in extreme cases. The man turned to look at the group, face still puffy. "None of you actually drank the juice he gave you, right?" Leorio's face went pale. His hand instinctively flew to his stomach. Reo sighed and added, "We'll be fine. People like him usually carry the antidote, just in case they accidentally poison themselves." Leorio, now sweating profusely, rushed over to Tunpa's unconscious body and began searching through his belongings. A few tense seconds passed. Then, "Yes. Thank goodness. There are 3 vials, 2 cracked, but 1 still good." Leorio held up the tiny bottle labeled antidote, tore the cap off, and downed it without hesitation. "Hey hunters. Just a quick break. Hopefully you like this one. I think it's pretty good. Anyway, let's keep going." Chapter 11. Scared me to death. If I'd actually died from that, I wouldn't even have been able to face anyone in the afterlife, Leorio muttered, tossing the empty antidote bottle aside and sighing as he looked at Reo and the others. "I didn't expect you to see through Tunpa's trick so quickly, Reo. That's amazing. I didn't notice a thing," Gon said, rubbing his chin in admiration. Reo, who had only known because he'd read the original story, felt a bit awkward being praised like that. The situation was a little surreal. "Yeah. I totally thought Tunpa was a nice guy," Leorio added, scowling. "Didn't expect him to enjoy sabotaging and killing rookies for fun. That kind of person is seriously dangerous." Since he had actually drunk the poisoned juice, Leorio's resentment toward Tunpa was the strongest. Kurapika nodded solemnly as he looked at Tunpa's unconscious body. It really is disturbing to meet someone like that in the hunter exam. But thinking about it, for someone to attempt the test 35 times, there must be something very off about them. Honestly, it's terrifying. Reo stepped forward and addressed the group, tone serious. There are probably more people like Tunpa, those who enjoy crushing rookies. We should all stay sharp from here on out. After all, Hisako was still lurking somewhere nearby. Just as Reo finished speaking, he felt something, an intense gaze locked onto him. It wasn't the usual curious glance from another examinee. This one carried intent, something darker. Even though Reo had tempered his killing instinct through Tai Chi training, his former street fighting instincts hadn't dulled. He was still highly attuned to hostility. This gaze didn't just have killing intent, it carried something else. Something twisted. Rio's skin prickled. He turned his head, scanning the crowd, until he saw him. Hisaka. The clown-faced man was staring directly at him, smiling as if he already knew what Reo was thinking. The memory of the earlier scene, the petals, the disintegration, flashed back into Rio's mind. It had been chilling. Rio's lips twitched. He'd just told Gon to avoid attracting Hisaka's attention. And now he was the one being noticed. Not wanting to escalate things, Reo broke eye contact and turned away, rejoining Gon and the others as if nothing had happened. Not long after. Jingle bells. An alarm sounded, and a strange figure emerged from the same elevator the candidates had arrived in. The man wore a sharp purple suit, looked proper and gentlemanly, but had no visible mouth. Reo instantly recognized him. Satots, the first examiner. Apologies for the wait, candidates, Satots said in a clear voice, despite his lack of a mouth. Registration for this year's hunter exam is now closed. A total of 406 applicants have arrived. The exam is about to begin. Before we proceed, I must remind you, the hunter exam is dangerous. There is a high risk of serious injury or even death. If you do not wish to take the risk, please exit now through the elevator behind me. Despite how strange it was, Satots' voice reached every examinee clearly, calm, yet solemn. 1 minute later. Only one person left, the man who lost his arm earlier due to Hisaka. The rest remained, silent and determined. Time's up, Satots announced. The first trial begins now. Out of 406 candidates, 405 remain. Please follow me to the next testing site. With that, he turned and began walking, with a brisk but smooth pace. The exam had officially begun. Chapter 12. At first, Reo and the others followed Satots without much trouble, but as they continued walking, Leorio started to notice something was off. Hey, do you guys feel like something's weird? It's like we're going faster and faster. Just as he said that, the crowd ahead of them suddenly broke into a run. It's not your imagination, we're running now, Reo said, glancing back. Don't overthink it. Just keep up. Before Leorio could react further, Satots' voice echoed from the front. I forgot to mention earlier, I'm the examiner for the first phase of the hunter exam. You may call me Mr. Satots. I am currently leading you to the location of the second phase. Please keep pace, and don't fall behind. Only then did Leorio snap out of his confusion and hurry after the group. A bald examinee near the front called out to Satots. Wait, so all we have to do is follow you to the second test site, right? That's correct, Satots replied. I can't disclose the exact location, but as long as you follow me, you'll arrive at the next test area. Well, you heard him, Reo said with a sigh, turning to Gon and the others. Let's just keep moving. And so, Reo, Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio continued running through the massive underground corridor. 4 hours later. Because Reo had already greeted Tunpa earlier, the man didn't dare cause any more trouble. He clearly understood by now that messing with Reo and his group was futile. Thanks to that, Leorio didn't end up being tricked into taking a wrong passage and getting trapped in a hallucination like in the original story. But after 4 solid hours of running, his stamina was nearly depleted. Every step forward now was powered by sheer will. I thought I had mentally prepared myself for this. But I still underestimated it. These people aren't normal, they're monsters. Leorio panted, sweat soaking through his shirt. He had already taken off his jacket and tied it around his waist in a desperate attempt to cool down, but he was still drenched. Reo considered helping. He knew some physical techniques from his underground fighting days that could boost short-term stamina. But when he offered, Leorio refused with stubborn pride. "No thanks," Leorio had said. "I'm a doctor, I can handle it myself." Reo could only shake his head and watch as his friend slogged forward, step by painful step. WHRRRRWHRRRR. A soft, rolling sound came from nearby. Reo turned to see a white-haired boy with big, sapphire blue eyes and a calm expression skating effortlessly beside them. It was Killua, cruising along on his skateboard like it was just another afternoon stroll. Leorio, half dead from exhaustion, glanced over, and nearly lost it. Here he was, gasping for air and pushing his limits, while some kid was casually skateboarding next to him, barely breaking a sweat. "Hey! You little brat, get back here." Killua gave him a look of confusion, then turned to glance at Gon, who was running next to Reo. Seeing he was being ignored, Leorio suddenly surged with energy, catching up to Killua and yelling, "You're making a joke out of this exam." Killua blinked, clearly not expecting the outburst. "This test is about endurance and perseverance. And you're just skating through it. That's cheating." Leorio seemed totally revitalized by the argument, practically running circles around Killua now as he ranted. Reo rolled his eyes. "Leorio, calm down. Satots never said this was a test. All he said was to keep up. That's it. If someone brought a skateboard, they're free to use it." "Exactly." Gon chimed in. "The examiner didn't say we couldn't. We just have to follow him, that's all." "Whose side are you two even on?" Leorio wailed. "How can you both take his side?" He pulled out a handkerchief from who knows where and bit down on it, tears of frustration streaming down his face. Chapter 13. Killua glanced briefly at Reo, then turned his attention to Gon and asked, "Hey! How old are you?" "Huh? Me?" Gon blinked, glanced at Killua, then answered once Killua gave a small nod. "I'm 12 years old." 12, huh? Killua muttered, hopping off his skateboard with a smooth somersault and jogging over to Gon's side. "I'm Killua. I'm 12 too. Whoa. That flip was awesome. You're so cool." Gon beamed with excitement. "I'm Gon." Then Gon enthusiastically pointed to each of his companions. "This tall guy who doesn't talk much is Reo. He's super strong, a total master tilde. The one with blonde hair is Kurapika, and this is Mr. Leorio. But just call him Leorio, he doesn't like formal stuff." Gon introduced everyone with energy, completely forgetting Reo had previously warned him about being too open with strangers. Reo, off to the side, nodded silently. Since he already knew who Killua was, he didn't feel the need to say much. Half an hour later. HxH. Leorio could no longer speak clearly, his breath had been reduced to the sound of a wheezing pig. "We've been running for nearly 4 hours now," Kurapika said, sweating as he tied his jacket around his waist. "Must have covered about 60 kilometers. We've probably passed beyond Zaban City by now. And there's still no end in sight." Thud. Suddenly, Leorio collapsed. "Leorio," Gon gasped, rushing over to him. Reo and Kurapika followed close behind. But Leorio was unconscious, completely out cold from exhaustion. "Leave him," Killua said, glancing at the fallen man. "We'll get left behind if we stop. Better to keep going." "No, I'll carry him," Reo said calmly. I'm still good on stamina. Thanks to his fighting background and the physical enhancements he'd gained from the creatures he contracted back on Whale Island, Reo had barely broken a sweat. He hoisted Leorio onto his back and resumed running with the group. Killua glanced sideways at Reo as they ran. There was something about his presence, his aura, that felt oddly familiar to him. Soon after, the hallway ahead began to slope upward, and a new challenge presented itself. The final stretch had come. Climbing up was far more taxing than running on level ground. Everyone's stamina was tested as they began ascending the steep passage. Meanwhile, Reo carried Leorio in a piggyback style reminiscent of Might Guy carrying Kakashi. As the path tilted upward, Leorio's head lolled backward due to gravity. After a moment, he stirred. Is that you, Reo? Leorio groaned, slowly regaining awareness. Man. Thanks. I can't believe I passed out during the first phase. What a disgrace. Put me down, I'm finishing the rest on my own. Seeing that Leorio had recovered, Reo nodded and gently lowered him. Whoa Leorio, you're awake, Kurapika said, relieved. You dropped like a rock, scared the hell out of us. Glad you're okay. Yeah, I'm fine now. Thanks to Reo, seriously. I owe you big time, Leorio replied. My stamina's coming back. I'll finish this part myself. Up ahead, a faint glow appeared, a sign that the exit was near. Gon and Killua exchanged grins. Race you to the finish? Killua asked. You're on. After a quick 3-second countdown, the two of them shot forward like a pair of wild black rats, darting ahead and weaving through the other examinees toward the light. Chapter 14. Alright, almost there. Let's push forward, Reo shouted to Kurapika and Leorio, who were just behind him. He always made sure to notify them as soon as there was a change ahead. Really? That's great. Let's go. Leorio perked up at the news and, ignoring the fact that he'd only just recovered some stamina, surged ahead past Reo to take the lead. Reo exchanged a small shake of the head with Kurapika, and the two of them took off after him. Catching up, Kurapika glanced over at Leorio and asked why he was pushing himself so hard. Reo, however, wasn't too interested in the conversation and focused on moving forward. After about half an hour of running, he reached the exit. As he emerged into the light, the sudden brightness washed over him, but he adjusted in less than a second. Reo looked up at the blue sky and fluffy white clouds overhead, a cool breeze brushing his face. The fresh air left him feeling completely refreshed. Around him, the other candidates were looking around curiously at the mist-filled forest surrounding the exit. A few moments later, Leorio arrived. Ah! Fresh air. I'm alive again, he gasped between breaths, deeply relieved to be out of the underground tunnel. Hard to believe this was just the first phase of the exam. And it's already eliminated so many people, Kurapika said with a faint smile, glancing at Leorio. Meanwhile, Gon and Killua, who had been the first to exit along with Satots, were trying to determine who had won their race. Satots gave them a polite glance and answered in his calm, eerie voice. Well, from what I could see, you two came out at the same time. So let's call it a tie. Gon and Killua looked slightly disappointed by the verdict. Fine. Since it's a tie, I'll treat you to a meal sometime, Gon offered cheerfully. And then you can treat me next time. Deal? Killua was momentarily surprised by Gon's sudden suggestion, but then smiled and nodded. Sounds good. You treat me once, I treat you once. Leorio, watching their easy camaraderie, turned to Reo, who was silently admiring the scenery. Ah! Youth. They've got that youthful spirit going on, he said with a nostalgic sigh. Gon turned to Reo with a curious grin. By the way, Reo, we all know each other's ages now, but we never asked you. How old are you? Reo, still taking in the scenery, blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected the question to come back to him, but it wasn't a secret. I'm 18. About the same age as Leorio. Though Leorio definitely looks older. What? 18? Gon exclaimed. I thought Leorio was, like, 28. Killua added, eyes wide. With how easily he runs out of energy, I figured he was way older than us. Because Gon and Killua had been focused on their race earlier, they hadn't caught the earlier conversation between Kurapika and Leorio. Now, both boys stared at Leorio in disbelief. Hey! What's with those faces? Is it really that weird that I'm 18? Rio's the same age, Leorio shouted, practically spitting fire like a Gatling gun with his rapid protests. Kurapika chimed in with a dry smile. Well, it's easy to believe Rio's 18. But you? That one's a little harder to accept. All right, Reo said quickly, waving a hand. Let's save the age debate for later. We're still in the middle of the hunter exam. Let's stay focused before someone does something reckless again. With that, the group shifted their attention forward once more, toward whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 15. At that moment, the examiner stepped forward and addressed the crowd. He glanced around at the gathered examinees and began to speak. Candidates, what lies before you is a place known as the Swindler's Swamp. He paused, letting the name settle in the air before continuing. Locals also call it the Lair of Fraudsters. This is the only route to the second phase of the hunter exam. In this misty wetland, the fog thickens the deeper you go, and within it dwell many exotic beasts found nowhere else in the world. He paused again. Most of them have a taste for human flesh. And by nature, they're cunning, greedy, and highly deceptive. Just as he finished speaking, a loud mechanical sound echoed through the space. Ka-chunk. Everyone turned toward the source. The entrance they had all just come from was now slowly closing. Wait. Wait for me. A desperate voice called out. One last examinee, still in the passage, sprinted toward the door. Bang. The door slammed shut before he could make it through. Reo and the others could still hear his panicked shouts as he was sealed off. TCH. You shouldn't let your guard down, even at the last moment, one of the nearby candidates scoffed. Guy had it coming. Reo ignored the commentary and turned his focus back to Satots, who clearly wasn't finished. Now then, the examiner continued, please stay close and follow my lead. One wrong step in this swamp, and you'll fall into a trap. And in here, that's a death sentence. He turned and began to walk forward. Suddenly, a disheveled man appeared from the side of the swamp path, dragging a large sack behind him. Liar, he shouted, eyes wild. That man is an imposter. He's not a real hunter examiner, I am. The man raised his voice and pointed at Satots. Satots, however, remained calm and expressionless. Leorio furrowed his brows and stepped forward. Hey, old man, if you're going to accuse someone of lying, you better have proof. The man grinned and tossed the sack onto the ground. Take a look at this. As the cloth bag unraveled, the head of a strange monkey-like creature rolled out. It looked eerily similar to Satots. Gasps rose from the crowd. The resemblance was uncanny. This creature, the man continued, is a human-faced ape, native to the Tamil wetlands. They mimic human appearance and behavior, luring people in with speech and deception. He's one of them. He's trying to lead you to your deaths. The crowd murmured uncertainly. Satots' bizarre gait and expressionless demeanor had already made many candidates suspicious. Now, some began surrounding him, expressions wary. Reo, arms crossed, clicked his tongue. Seriously? You people want to be hunters, and you're this easy to fool. He stepped forward, annoyance clear in his voice. The real examiner met us at the first test site, clearly identified by the Hunter Association's badge. And now you're second-guessing him because of some guy dragging around a monkey in a sack? Unbelievable. His bluntness made several of the candidates pause. They glanced at each other, uncertainty beginning to replace suspicion. Then, without warning, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several playing cards sliced through the air, flying toward Reo, HxH, and the mysterious man. Reo calmly raised a hand and caught the card mid-flight. HxH reacted just as swiftly, catching his own. But the ragged man, too slow, was struck squarely. He fell to the ground, unmoving. Well, that cleared things up. A voice drawled. The crowd turned to see HxH, toying with another card between his fingers. The hunter profession is something we all aspire to. If you can't even dodge an attack this basic, you're not fit to be here. HxH's gaze flicked between Reo and HxH, clearly intrigued. HxH looked at HxH and spoke in a calm, measured tone. I'll thank you for your assistance, this time. But if you attack me again for any reason, I will immediately disqualify you from the exam. Reo opened his hand and let the playing card fall to the ground, saying nothing. He understood HxH's intent, it was a provocation. But now wasn't the time to take the bait. Reo knew he wasn't yet strong enough to take HxH head-on. HxH's grin only widened. Even though his challenge hadn't gotten the reaction he hoped for, he didn't seem disappointed. Instead, he let out a low, eerie chuckle as he walked away. Chapter 16. HxH continued leading the examinees through the swampy terrain toward the next exam site. Reo and the others ran just behind him. At some point along the way, the mist in the forest thickened. Before long, it became nearly impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. Concerned that Leorio might fall behind, like in the original timeline, Reo tied Leorio's jacket to his own arm to make sure they stayed connected. Up ahead, Killua suddenly turned to Gon, who was running beside him. Gon, let's move up front, he said. Yeah, good idea, Gon nodded without hesitation. We don't want to lose sight of the examiner. Killua glanced at him, then added, more importantly, we need to keep our distance from HxH. That guy's getting edgy. I can smell it. Gon actually sniffed the air. Huh? I don't smell anything. Killua didn't answer. He just grabbed Gon's arm and picked up the pace, heading for the front of the group. Still, Gon turned and shouted back. Reo. Kurapika. Leorio. You guys should try to move up too. Reo, hearing Gon's well-intentioned call, resisted the urge to flick him on the head. If it weren't for Leorio, he'd have already moved ahead a long time ago. From beside him, Leorio shouted through gritted teeth, you little idiot. If I could run like that, I'd be ahead already. Kurapika, however, was more measured. Thanks, Gon, he called out. But don't worry about us, just keep going. Reo looked at them and sighed. Alright, that's enough talk. Gon, Killua, you two go ahead. Kurapika, Leorio, I've got you both covered. Don't worry. Gon, understanding Rio's strength, nodded in relief and followed Killua up to HxH's side. Soon after, the fog began to clear, and visibility gradually returned. Reo kept running, but something felt off. He glanced sideways. And froze. Leorio had somehow turned into a girl. Reo stared at the shredded remains of the jacket tied to his arm. Seriously? He'd done all this to make sure Leorio wouldn't get left behind, and now this? Was this fate messing with him? While Reo stood dumbfounded, a loud rustling came from nearby. A huge white ape dropped from the trees with a heavy thud. It towered above the ground, slightly smaller than Burra, but still massive. The ape ignored Reo completely. It turned to the girl beside him and let out a deep roar, pounding its chest repeatedly. Its entire body seemed to swell with excitement. Reo narrowed his eyes. He recognized this creature from his time in the Whale Island Library. Acacia ape, he muttered aloud. A rare species. Not interested in its own kind, male or female. For some reason, it's obsessed with humans. He glanced at the girl, who had gone pale. "This one's a male," Reo continued, completely calm. "Looks like he's fallen for you, miss." The girl clutched something wrapped in cloth, maybe a stick or a gun, but clearly nothing strong enough to stop a beast of that size. There was no doubt, if Reo didn't act, she'd die here. Still, he kept his voice casual as he stepped in front of her. "Lucky for you, I'm not heartless," he said, glancing back at her. "Not a saint either, but I don't stand around and watch people get mauled." He cracked his knuckles. "Just stay behind me. Guys like this. Once you take off the head, the rest follows." Chapter 17. Rio's feet tapped rapidly against the ground, and then he vanished in an instant, leaving only a swirl of dust behind him. The giant acacia ape, focused entirely on the girl it had fixated on, didn't even register Rio's sudden disappearance. His speed was simply too fast. When Reo reappeared, he was already sprinting along the ape's massive body. With the ape's colossal head just an arm's length away, Reo raised his right hand like a blade and slashed downward at its neck. Ding! His attack struck, but instead of slicing through, it rebounded with a harsh metallic clang. He'd only managed to cut through the creature's thick hair. His strike had failed. Reo quickly jumped off the ape's back. Roar! The acacia ape let out a furious bellow. The pain from Rio's blow awakened something primal. It no longer cared about the girl, it wanted revenge. A moment ago, the creature had been in courtship mode. Its behavior, while bizarre and terrifying, wasn't aggressive. Now, that had changed. Its posture shifted, its muscles tensed, and its entire demeanor became hostile. The killing intent in the air thickened. If the pressure Reo had felt before was a 3 out of 10, now it had jumped to at least a 5. Reo exhaled slowly, calming his body and mind. "Don't get cocky," he reminded himself. "Stay focused. Its strength and temperament have changed completely," he muttered. Rather than charge in recklessly, Reo began circling the beast. Each time he moved, the ape shifted to face him, never letting him out of its sight. Reo feinted forward once. The ape raised its claws in anticipation, but Reo didn't follow through. He stopped mid-lunge, reading its movements carefully. Frustrated, the ape let out another roar and lunged forward on all fours like a charging tank. Its speed wasn't great, but its momentum was terrifying, like being chased by an armored truck. The wind from its charge was enough to sting Rio's face. As it neared, the ape reared up and swung one of its enormous claws down toward Rio's head. Reo twisted sideways at the last moment. The claw missed, but the gust it carried was strong enough to lift Rio's hair into the air. Before he could regain his footing, the ape's massive tail whipped toward him like a steel bat. Unable to dodge in time, Reo chose to meet it head-on. Channeling all his strength, he struck the incoming tail with both hands in a chopping motion. Boom! The impact shook the earth. The ground beneath them cracked, and dust exploded into the air. Rio's expression darkened. The force behind that tail had been no joke. But to his surprise, he'd done more damage than expected. A visible gash had opened in the ape's tail. Its defense wasn't as impenetrable as he'd thought. The acacia ape let out a furious screech and instinctively took a few steps back. Reo wouldn't waste the opportunity. He vanished again, reappearing atop the beast, and once more dashed toward its already injured neck. Both of his hands formed sharp, rigid blades, palm knives, as he launched a flurry of strikes at the same spot. Roar! The ape howled. Reo had broken through the thick fur, and with a few more attacks, he could finish it. But the enraged creature wasn't about to give up. With one paw, it clutched the burning wound on its neck. With the other, it swiped upward at Reo, trying to crush him. Reo leapt back, but not fast enough. The claws grazed his abdomen, leaving deep gashes across his lower torso. Blood dripped from the wounds. If I'd been a second slower, Reo thought grimly, that swipe would have torn out my guts. Seeing blood, the ape charged again, emboldened. Its enormous palm slammed down where Reo had just stood, missing him by inches as he rolled away. He sprang to his feet and, without hesitation, raised one hand. His other palm turned into a blade once more. HxH. He slashed downward, dark red blood gushed from the ape's arm. The ape cried out in pain. Instinctively, it raised its uninjured hand to clutch the fresh wound. Reo took the opening. He darted up the injured arm like a staircase, rushing toward the exposed neck. Both hands became hand blades, swinging at lightning speed. To any observer, it would have looked like a blur of crimson light, dark red arcs flashing in midair as Reo, soaked in the beast's blood and lit by the sunlight cutting through the fog, launched his final barrage. Chapter 18. After a brief pause, Reo fell back down to the ground and extended his right hand. A strange book, visible only to him, appeared. Its surface shimmered as if liquid were flowing across it, giving it an eerie, otherworldly feel. Without being touched, the book flipped open on its own. One by one, images appeared: rabbits, fish, ants, horses. Then, it landed on the 5th page. A few seconds later, the image of an acacia ape appeared. Along with the image, 2 streams of information surged into Reo's mind, one offering enhanced strength, the other granting a boost to lower body capabilities. Without hesitation, Reo chose the first. A moment later, he felt an itching sensation across his abdomen. The deep wound that had been clawed into him earlier was already beginning to heal. Not only that, his stamina, which had been nearly drained in battle, was now fully restored, perhaps even stronger than before. It was strange. This ability, the contractor's notes, didn't feel like a typical Nen ability. It felt more like a magical artifact, but one that had completely bonded with him. After quickly assessing his condition, Reo turned to check on the girl he'd saved. She was staring at him wide-eyed, though her sunglasses obscured her eyes. Her open mouth said enough. To be fair, her reaction was understandable. Though the fight against the giant acacia ape had seemed dramatic, it had taken less than 5 minutes in total, including the time Reo spent forming the contract. Without that, the fight would have ended even quicker. He approached her with a casual smile. All done. The ape's taken care of. Let's head toward the next test site. But the girl instinctively stepped back, clearly unsettled by the blood covering Reo's body. Seeing this, Reo chuckled and said nothing. He turned to leave on his own, prepared to go find the others. Wait. Please, wait. He turned back to face her. Thank you for saving me. My name is Lena. Sorry I didn't say anything earlier, I was in shock. Reo blinked. He hadn't expected a formal thank you. That kind of thing had been rare in his previous life. No worries. It was nothing, really. He gave a small smile. I'm Reo. And I didn't mind at all. Lena's face lit up, and she stepped forward, completely disregarding the blood still clinging to Reo's clothes. Now I'd like to go with you, if you don't mind? Reo didn't have any objections to that. Still, he needed to reunite with Leorio and the others, so he explained. I'm actually looking for my friends right now. If you're okay with that, feel free to tag along. To his mild surprise, Lena nodded enthusiastically. 10 minutes later. Leorio. Kurapika. Can you hear me? Reo called out as he walked with Lena through the woods. But the mist was still thick, and they hadn't seen a single soul, not even other examinees. Wait, I think I see someone, Lena said, pointing ahead. Reo squinted. Sure enough, there were figures up ahead, and quite a few of them. He and Lena made their way toward the group. Reo. There you are. Gon spotted him immediately and ran over. You're covered in blood, no wonder I couldn't smell you. Reo raised a hand in greeting. Gon, don't worry about that. Have you seen Leorio or Kurapika? We got separated in the fog. Leorio? Yeah, He's right over there with Kurapika. Gon pointed to the left. Reo turned and saw them waving. Leorio had a few extra bandages, but thankfully, he didn't look too bad, certainly better than the blue-nosed mess he'd been in the original story. "Yo, Reo." Leorio greeted with a grin. "You okay? You're totally drenched in blood, did you get hurt? Let me check." Reo waved him off. "I'm fine. Just took down a giant beast on the way. The blood's not mine. But what happened to you two? You just vanished." Leorio scratched his head awkwardly. "Well, that's kind of." "He was hallucinating," Kurapika said flatly. "Thought he was being chased by a monster, so he hacked his own suit with a knife. I had to snap him out of it." "Kurapika?" Leorio shouted. "Don't just expose me like that." No one paid him any mind. Then Kurapika noticed Lena standing behind Reo. "Reo, who's this?" "Oh, this is Lena," Reo replied. "We met along the way. Just thought I'd introduce her." Lena stepped forward and gave a polite bow. "Hello. I'm Lena. Nice to meet you all." Just then, a voice rang out from nearby. Chapter 19. I hereby announce that the first phase of the Hunter exam is officially over. Any candidates who arrive after this point will be disqualified. It was HxH, the examiner from the first trial, standing in a clearing as he made the announcement. He then pulled a flare gun from his belt and fired it into the sky. Fwoosh! Pop! A bright puff of smoke bloomed overhead, a signal, clearly prepared in advance. "Candidates, thank you for your efforts. You are currently located in Biscayne Forest Park, which also happens to be the venue for the second phase of the exam. And with that, my role ends here. I'll be taking my leave now. I wish all of you luck in becoming hunters." With those words, HxH turned and began walking away into the forest. Most of the examinees didn't pay much attention to his departure. They were too focused on the building that stood ahead, clearly the site of the next challenge. But what none of them noticed was that HxH, after taking a few steps into the woods, quietly circled back. He leapt into a tree just outside the venue and crouched on a sturdy branch, watching the candidates below with interest. A total of 405 people took the first exam, he muttered to himself, and 148 made it through. That's more than I expected. But it's a shame. Many of them will probably drop out soon. He sighed. After all, the next examiners are those two. With how picky they are, I'd be surprised if even a few dozen pass. He leaned back against the tree trunk with a grin. Well, might as well stick around and watch the show. Elsewhere, Reo and the others were gathered in front of the entrance to a large building. Gon looked up and exhaled. Phew. I can't believe so many people were eliminated during just the first phase. We're lucky we all made it. Leorio nodded. Yeah, I honestly thought I wasn't going to make it. That was rough. Kurapika crossed his arms and offered a reality check. We've only cleared the first phase. There are still several more to go. Remember, this exam only produces a hunter once every few years, sometimes even decades. Ugh, Kurapika, did you really have to say that? Leorio groaned, clutching his head. Now I feel even more anxious. I wonder what the second test is going to be about? Don't bother guessing, Reo said, cutting in calmly. Whatever it is, you're better off saving your strength. Take this time to rest. The others went quiet, realizing he had a point. No one noticed the alarm clock mounted above the entrance. Until it began to chime. Ding ding ding. Everyone jumped slightly, startled by the sudden sound. Click. 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 The door ahead began to slowly open. What's behind that door? Leorio murmured, curiosity piqued. But it didn't take long to find out. The room beyond was now fully visible, and it captured the attention of every candidate. Inside, two people sat waiting. At the front was a beautiful woman with pink hair, lounging on a sofa. She wore hot pants and a fishnet top, legs crossed casually. Behind her stood a massive, mountain-like man, tall and round like a boulder. The woman glanced lazily at the examinees and spoke with a sly smile. "Candidates, you kept us waiting." She turned slightly to address the giant behind her. "Burra, how's your stomach? Still hungry?" The large man responded not with words, but with a loud growl from his gut. "Grrrrrrl." He rubbed his stomach and nodded. "You heard that, didn't you? I'm starving." The woman nodded and turned back to face the examinees. "I imagine most of you have already guessed, but this is the site of the second phase of the Hunter exam. And we," she gestured between herself and her partner, "are your examiners. I'm Menki, and this guy is Burra. We are both gourmet hunters, also known as food hunters." Gon's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Food hunters? You hunt down food?" That question earned a chuckle from Kurapika, who stepped forward to explain. "Not exactly. Food hunters travel the world in search of rare and exotic ingredients. Their work is often extremely dangerous, sometimes more so than a bounty hunter's." In the crowd, Hanzo rubbed his bald head and muttered, "So if our examiners are food hunters, then the next challenge must be food-related, right?" Menki smiled. "That's right. The second phase is all about cooking." Chapter 20. The examinees were stunned by what the beautiful examiner had just said. Most of them had come to the Hunter exam confident in their strength, but cooking? That wasn't something many had prepared for. These people were experts at tracking, fighting, or stealing, but when it came to preparing a meal, they were completely out of their depth. "Hey! We finally passed the first phase, and now we have to cook." The wrestler Tuodu, whom Dongba had introduced earlier, shouted in frustration. "Tch! Idiot! What kind of test the examiner chooses is entirely up to them. What's the point in whining?" Reo shot Tuodu a side eye and cursed him silently. "This guy's a powder keg. Say one wrong thing and boom. If he pisses off the examiner, we all suffer for it." Sure enough. "What's wrong? Looking down on food hunters?" Menki snapped, glaring at Tuodu. "If you're not satisfied, you're free to quit and go home." Tuodu hadn't expected to be called out so directly. He clenched his fists, clearly irritated, but didn't dare talk back. Menki let her gaze sweep across the group and added coldly, "If there's anyone else unhappy with the test, feel free to withdraw now. I won't say a word." Silence. The examinees stood frozen, none of them daring to make a sound. Satisfied, Menki gave a small nod. Seeing that the tension had settled, Hanzo stepped forward and asked politely, "Examiner Menki, may I ask what kind of dish we're expected to make?" Burra, still lounging comfortably behind her, answered with a grin. "Simple. The candidates will each prepare a dish of my choosing." Menki nodded, elaborating. "That's right. Burra's dish comes first. Only after completing his dish will you move on to mine. Both dishes must satisfy us to pass this phase of the exam." Before they could continue, Tuodu raised his voice again. "Oh, come on. So whether we pass or not is just based on your personal taste? What if we cook something great, but you just don't like it?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd as others began to agree. "Yeah. What if our food's good but doesn't suit your palate?" The situation quickly spiraled, and the air buzzed with rising complaints. Reo noticed Menki's expression growing darker and darker, the veins on her forehead practically pulsing. "Then," she exploded, "like I said, if you don't want to take this test, get the hell out of here." She turned on her heel and stormed back to her seat on the sofa. The examinees exchanged nervous glances. In the end, it was the ever-smiling Burra who broke the tension with a booming voice. "Candidates, listen up. The first challenge is to prepare roasted whole pig. And the catch is, you can only gather ingredients from this park. Don't bring in pigs from outside and expect me to count them. Everyone froze. Kurapika, do you know where to find pigs around here? Reo turned to Kurapika like he was a walking encyclopedia. Idiot. I don't know everything, Kurapika snapped. But they didn't have to wonder for long. Suddenly, the ground began to rumble. From the trees, a herd of massive pink pigs burst into the clearing. These pigs were huge, nothing like the average farm pigs. Each one had a curved, armor-like nose horn, giving them an intimidating appearance. Without warning, the pigs charged into the crowd, sending several unprepared candidates flying. Reo reacted immediately, pulling Gon and the others out of the pigs' path. They managed to avoid being launched, but the attack scattered the group. From his post, Burra called out cheerfully. These are porcupines, vicious carnivorous pigs with armored noses, built for ramming and goring prey. Oh, and one more thing, you're the prey if you're not careful. He chuckled and returned to his seat. Reo, already familiar with the creature, quickly shared what he knew. Their weak spot is the head. Hit them there with enough force, and they'll go down easily. Gon and the others tried it, and it worked. With careful strikes to the head, they were able to bring down their targets one by one. After taking care of his pig, Reo found a stream nearby and jumped in to wash himself off. The blood sticking to his body had been bothering him since the last fight. He had originally planned to form a soul contract with the porcupine, but after seeing that its only ability was related to eating, he shook his head with a sigh and let the soul go. As for fresh clothes, with this many candidates around, he figured it wouldn't be hard to liberate a spare outfit if needed. Chapter 21. After rinsing the blood off his body in the river, Reo picked up the haunt-nosed mad pig he had casually left by the bank and made his way back to the exam venue. Since Burra, the supposed food hunter, didn't seem to take his job all that seriously, Reo didn't feel the need to put much effort into the dish either. As long as the roasted pig was edible, that was good enough. Most of the other examinees had some fighting ability, so apart from those who got caught off guard in the initial charge, the pigs hadn't caused too much damage. By the time Reo arrived at the venue, a few candidates had already returned with their roasted pigs. Judging from the smell and appearance, their cooking wasn't much better than if they had just tossed the pigs over a random campfire by the river. Burra, who had been groaning with hunger for what felt like hours, immediately perked up when he saw the roasted pigs. Without waiting for the rest of the candidates to return, he began digging into the closest ones like a starved bear. Reo's pig was roasted simply but cleanly. Burra ate it with a satisfied grunt and gave it a passing evaluation. At that moment, a thundering of footsteps echoed outside. Reo turned to see what was happening, and the sight made his jaw tighten slightly. A large group of examinees had returned, each hoisting a roasted whole pig above their heads like a trophy, rushing toward the test site in unison. As they arrived at the entrance, they shouted together like they had rehearsed it. "Thanks for waiting." Burra, who had already eaten a few pigs, looked absolutely thrilled at the incoming buffet. His eyes sparkled as he leapt to his feet, strolling straight toward the group and grabbing a pig at random to bite into. "Not bad at all," he said between mouthfuls. "Looks like this batch of candidates is better than the ones from previous years. I didn't expect so many of you to come back with food. Guess I underestimated you." Menki, still lounging on her sofa nearby, stood up and crossed her arms, a bit impressed. Up in the tree nearby, Satots, the examiner from the first trial, was observing the scene with narrowed eyes. "Quite the haul," he muttered. "But I wonder how those pigs actually taste. After all, this guy is supposed to be one of the best food hunters in the world." Burra, meanwhile, was blissfully ignorant of the scrutiny and fully immersed in his one-man feast. Another roasted pig disappeared in seconds, and Burra let out a deep, satisfied sigh. "Delicious. Satots, how many people can he even taste properly?" Burra picked up another, "Delicious. Satots, best food hunter in the world." Burra grabbed a half-cooked pig, best in the world. Satots, and such refined taste. Burra chomped on one with a burned snout, unique flavor. Satots, unique taste buds. Burra grabbed a pig that was practically raw, so fresh. Satots, internally screaming. I can accept him calling a half-cooked pig delicious. I can even accept him liking a burnt one. But this? This one's not even cooked. Isn't the test literally called roasted whole pig? Hello? By the time anyone noticed, all the roasted pigs the examinees had brought had been completely devoured. Behind Burra was a towering mountain of picked clean pig bones, easily taller than the man himself. Satots, still perched in the tree, looked down in stunned silence. He called every single one delicious. Is this man really a food hunter? Burra, rubbing his now bulging stomach, let out a satisfied belch and licked his fingers. Ah, that hit the spot. I'm full now. Menki, unfazed, casually picked up a small gong and gave it a solid ring to announce the results. Clang, clang, clang. All right. Burra ate 70 roasted whole pigs. Those dishes are officially cleared. Hey hunters. Just a quick break. Hopefully you're enjoying this fanfic. Which you clearly are if you've listened to over 90% of it. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, let's dive back in. Chapter 22. Seeing Burra sitting happily with a mountain of bones behind him, Hanzo stared in disbelief. This guy's a monster. Gon's eyes sparkled as he watched, awestruck. People who become hunters really aren't ordinary. Killua, however, remained unimpressed. He's strong, sure. But I wouldn't want to be like him. Reo looked at the pile of bones stacked higher than Burra himself and muttered. If this guy had been born in a rice-farming country, he'd be treated like a national treasure. Kurapika blinked in disbelief at Burra's bulging stomach. This defies logic. The amount he ate was clearly way more than his body could possibly hold. Leorio, arms crossed and unimpressed, rolled his eyes. He's already eaten. Why are we still analyzing it? Elsewhere, Menki glared at Burra, arms crossed in annoyance. Seriously? You said every single roasted pig was delicious? Do you have any standards at all? What kind of food hunter are you supposed to be? Burra, still lounging contentedly on the ground, licked his lips and replied with a shrug. Does it matter? I eliminated plenty of people, didn't I? Besides, this test wasn't just about their cooking skills. Menki sighed, clearly exasperated. You're way too easygoing. Don't forget, you're not just an examiner, you're a food hunter. You're supposed to care about flavor. That's your job. I really can't with you. Grumbling under her breath, she picked up a mallet and struck the hanging gong with a sharp clang. I hereby announce, the roast whole pig exam is complete. A total of 71 candidates have passed. Yay. That's awesome. The examinees who made the cut let out a loud cheer, arms raised in celebration. Up in the tree, Satots watched the festivities and quietly commented. 71 passed. Not bad at all. Although, the wild boar's weak spot on the forehead made it easier. Once you figure that out, it's not too hard to bring them down, but you still need sharp instincts and bravery to face one head-on. It takes talent beyond the ordinary to pull it off. But from here on, things get tricky. He narrowed his eyes slightly. After all, that girl is still the examiner, and she's not going to make it easy. To become a food hunter at such a young age and be recognized as the best gourmet connoisseur. She's no joke. Menki, one of the world's top master chefs. Her culinary instincts are unmatched. She brings art to her cooking like few others can. Her curiosity has driven her to explore every flavor imaginable. If she tastes something unforgettable, it stays with her forever. And to think she's only 21. Already a rising star in the world of food hunters. Satots crossed his arms and gave a quiet sigh. I almost feel sorry for the poor souls down there. Back on the ground, Minky stepped forward and addressed the candidates once more. Now then. I'm nothing like Burra. I'm not soft, and my grading is strict. With a sharp clap of her hands, the crowd instantly fell silent, every eye focused on her. Listen carefully, for the second part of this test, your task is to make sushi. A heavy silence fell. Every candidate blinked in confusion. Sushi? What's that? I've never even heard of it. What do we do? As expected, the entire group was dumbfounded, except for one bald guy and Reo, who didn't react. Minky smirked smugly at their panic. Sushi is a traditional dish from District 11. She watched their confusion for a few more moments, clearly enjoying herself, before sighing and waving her hand. All right. I'll give you a hint. Come with me. Chapter 23. Scene transition. Reo and the others were led by Minky into a room behind the testing area. Inside, there were about 100 prep stations, each equipped with pre-portioned sugar, vinegar, mustard, and rice. Because Reo had often eaten Japanese food in his previous life, he had a basic understanding of how to make sushi. He wasn't a master by any means, but it might just be enough to get him through the trial ahead. Minky gave the group a short but pointed explanation. For this sushi test, I'll only accept hand-formed sushi. I won't set a time limit, but once I'm full, the trial ends, so work fast. That's all. Begin. As soon as the instructions ended, the room buzzed with confusion and improvisation. Gon scooped up a lump of rice with a wooden spoon and stared at it curiously. Can you really make sushi with just rice? Killua, twirling a kitchen knife in his hand, added. There are a lot of tools here. We're probably meant to use more than just rice. Reo was about to approach Gon and offer a crash course in sushi making, but something on the other side of the room caught his attention. Badoro had poured half a basin of white rice directly onto the table, then mashed it together with his hands until it formed an enormous, misshapen rice ball. Reo, sharing a station with Hanzo, caught the expression of barely contained laughter on the ninja's face. Hanzo tried his best not to laugh out loud, knowing it would draw attention. But ironically, his suppressed reaction made it even more suspicious. Badoro, noticing something off, turned to glance their way. That guy's acting like he knows something suspicious. Reo rolled his eyes but said nothing. Hanzo's exaggerated attempts to hide his laughter were ridiculous enough on their own. A few minutes later, Reo made his way to Gon and Killua. Just as he was about to start explaining the process, Kurapika suddenly shouted from across the room. If you are looking for fish, aren't there rivers all over this forest? The room went still. In the next second, there was a mad dash as dozens of candidates rushed outside to catch fish. Gon immediately sprang into action, but Reo firmly grabbed his shoulder and pushed him back down. Gon blinked up at him, confused. Reo gave him a quick explanation. I've eaten sushi before, so I know how it works. When Kurapika and the others come back with fish, Killua, go grab 2 and say they're for me. I'll show you both how to make it then. For now, let's prep the rice. Gon nodded. Killua gave a thumbs up. Gon, bring all the white rice, vinegar, and sugar here. I'll take care of the mixing. Gon laid everything out on the table, and Reo washed his hands and got to work. He divided the rice into 10 equal portions, placing each one into its own bowl. Each bowl was numbered accordingly, from 1 to 10. Then, he began experimenting. First, he mixed the seasoning for bowl number 1, sugar, vinegar, and a splash of water, measuring by feel. He stirred the mixture into the rice and took a bite. Bleg. Too sour. Needs more sugar. He tossed the rice and started again. Still too sour. Another reset. Okay. A little sweet now. After 6 failed batches, Reo finally made a bowl he could swallow without grimacing. But he knew full well that it wouldn't be enough to pass Menki's judgment. So, again, on the 8th attempt, he carefully tweaked the balance of sugar and vinegar. After stirring it into the rice and taking a bite, a soft smile touched his lips. Perfect. Sweet and tangy, just right. Reo immediately retraced the process to ensure he could replicate it. After one more trial, he produced another bowl with the exact same flavor. Got it. Now, all that was left was to wait for Kurapika and the others to return with fish. Chapter 24. Since Reo had spent quite a bit of time preparing the seasoning water, Kurapika and the others returned not long after with freshly caught fish. For convenience, Reo brought them over to the cooking station beside him and began teaching them how to make nigiri sushi. Thanks to the prep work he'd already done with the rice seasoning, all that was left was to properly process the fish, and sushi could be assembled quickly. To make things clear, Reo began with a full demonstration, starting from the filleting process. He selected one of the fish, swiftly slaughtered and cleaned it, then sliced from the head and neck down the spine to the tail. After flipping it, he repeated the same process on the other side. With the body now halved, he deboned and peeled the skin before slicing it into 5 mm diagonal pieces, 30 cuts in total, arranged neatly on a nearby plate. Next, Reo poured the seasoned vinegar mixture into the rice and stirred with freshly washed hands. Once the rice was mixed thoroughly, he dipped his hands in clean water, scooped up a portion of rice, and gently shaped it into a compact rectangular form with his index and middle fingers. Then, he took a small amount of wasabi, spread it atop the rice, and carefully placed a slice of sashimi over it. A perfect piece of sushi was complete. Reo set the sushi down in front of everyone. Here. Take a good look at the shape. Whoa. That's amazing. I didn't know Reo could do something this complicated. Even the shape looks professional. Leorio couldn't help but shout in awe, until Kurapika, anticipating the noise, reached out and pinched him to shut him up. And the way he balanced the vinegar and sugar in the rice. Seriously impressive, Killua added, genuinely surprised. This guy's definitely eaten some high-end stuff before. I didn't think you'd know how to make sushi too. You're really full of surprises. Lena chimed in brightly from the side, somehow joining the group unnoticed. Reo simply smiled and said nothing. After all, his love for Japanese food in his past life was just a personal hobby, he never expected it to come in handy here. After a few laughs, Reo quietly made a fresh set of sushi, since Gon had already eaten the first one, and prepared to present it to Menki. He walked up with a small plate in hand. Menki, unsurprised, had clearly expected him. After all, Reo was one of the few who hadn't gone out fishing, so she figured he must know something. Reo opened the lid, revealing 4 neatly arranged nigiri pieces. He gently placed the plate in front of her and, mimicking something he once saw on TV, said with a polite flourish, "Dear guest, your nigiri sushi is served, with a touch of wasabi. Please enjoy at your leisure." Then he stood by and waited for her reaction. As a seasoned food hunter, Menki had eaten more sushi than most chefs had made, but the plate before her was unexpected. Each piece featured a different kind of fish, judging by the variation in color. That detail alone piqued her curiosity. In traditional sushi preparation, mixing multiple types of fish on one plate was usually avoided, but here, it made her want to see what Reo had in mind. Smiling with interest, she picked up her chopsticks and chose the sushi closest to her. She didn't dip it in sauce. Instead, she placed it directly into her mouth, choosing to experience the full, unfiltered flavor. Her eyes closed as she chewed, focusing on every sensation. First came the sashimi, fresh, light, and ever so slightly twitching from just being cut, a vivid reminder of its natural origin. Then, a subtle wave of wasabi. Normally, it might overpower freshwater fish, but this time, it complemented the flavor perfectly, enhancing it rather than masking it. Finally, the rice. Soft and sticky, but not mushy. The seasoning was delicate, just sweet enough to balance the sour, and pressed into the perfect texture by Rio's hands. Chapter 25. Reo watched as Menki bit into the sushi, closed her eyes, and stayed silent. He wasn't sure if that was a good or bad sign. A moment passed. Menki opened her eyes and looked straight at Reo. "You made this seasoning water yourself?" Reo blinked, a bit confused by the sudden question, but nodded. Menki dipped the remaining half of the sushi into the dipping sauce and placed it in her mouth. This time, she reacted more quickly, narrowing her eyes slightly as she chewed, then turned her gaze back to Reo. "You pass," she declared. "It's my first time eating sushi made from freshwater fish, but the flavor was full and balanced. The rice was shaped delicately and firmly, perfect for a younger audience. And with your own handmade seasoning water? This sushi was a success. Congratulations, Hunter exam, second trial, passed." She paused for a moment, still looking at Reo thoughtfully. "Say, have you ever considered becoming a food hunter?" Reo was stunned. He hadn't expected to get an invitation. "Huh? Me? I mean, I don't mind food hunters. But I'm more interested in exotic creatures." He thought that would be the end of it, that Menki would give up the idea. But instead. "Huh? You like exotic animals? That's perfect for a food hunter. You know how ideal it is to make those exotic beasts into delicious meals? That's basically the dream." Reo paused. That kind of made sense. But something about it still felt off. He decided to leave her with a vague answer for now. "I'll think about it. But for now, I'm not planning to become a food hunter." Menki didn't push. She simply nodded, pleased. Then came the sound of the gong again. Candidate number 406, Reo, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Meanwhile, Gon and the others had been watching Reo bring his sushi to Menki but hadn't seen him return for quite a while. They began to worry something had gone wrong. But the moment Menki made her announcement, they let out a collective sigh of relief. As Reo walked back, Gon and the others immediately started preparing their own sushi, determined to follow him in passing. Not far away, Hanzo was watching from a distance. He had already suspected that Reo was no ordinary examinee. Seeing him pass only confirmed it. Hanzo also knew that Rio's friends were likely to pass one after another, and if he didn't hurry up, he'd fall behind. With a renewed sense of urgency, Hanzo scrambled to make his sushi, but rushed preparation wasn't going to hold up against the others' efforts. Soon after, more announcements followed. Candidate number 403, Leorio, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 404, Kurapika, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 405, Gon Freaks, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 99, Kilawa Zoldyck, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 80, Lena, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. The remaining candidates, damn, I'm so jealous. The more Hanzo listened, the worse he felt. He quickly brought his rushed sushi to Menki. But Menki glanced at the plate, frowned, and said flatly, "Nope. Take it back and redo it." Her blunt rejection rattled Hanzo. In a panic, he tried to explain himself. Wait. Isn't nigiri sushi just rice shaped into a long oval, with some wasabi on top and a slice of sashimi? It's supposed to be bite-sized, right?" As soon as he said it, the room went quiet. Then a chorus of realization echoed through the crowd. "Oh. That's how you make nigiri sushi." The other examinees turned to Hanzo, now fully convinced he did know what he was doing. Even Pakal, who had been ridiculed earlier, was fuming. "I knew he knew the right way to do it," Pakal muttered, veins bulging on his forehead. From that point on, a line of desperate candidates presented Menki with plate after plate of poorly made sushi. Menki, stuck in her role as examiner, had to taste every last one. Eventually, she reached her limit. She slammed her chopsticks down, waved her hands at the crowd, and declared, "That's it, I'm full. Everyone else is disqualified." The room went silent. "What did you just say?" someone shouted in disbelief. Menki, completely unfazed, twirled her finger. "I said, everyone I didn't announce earlier is not qualified." She snorted lightly at the uproar. The temperature in the room plummeted. One by one, examinees turned icy glares toward Menki, their anger simmering. Up in the tree, Satatsu, who had been watching the whole time, realized something was wrong. He sighed, pulled out his communicator, and made a call to the Hunter Association. Reo watched as Menki bit into the sushi, closed her eyes, and stayed silent. He wasn't sure if that was a good or bad sign. A moment passed. Menki opened her eyes and looked straight at Reo. "You made this seasoning water yourself?" Reo blinked, a bit confused by the sudden question, but nodded. Menki dipped the remaining half of the sushi into the dipping sauce and placed it in her mouth. This time, she reacted more quickly, narrowing her eyes slightly as she chewed, then turned her gaze back to Reo. "You pass," she declared. "It's my first time eating sushi made from freshwater fish, but the flavor was full and balanced. The rice was shaped delicately and firmly, perfect for a younger audience. And with your own handmade seasoning water? This sushi was a success. Congratulations, Hunter exam, second trial, passed." She paused for a moment, still looking at Reo thoughtfully. "Say, have you ever considered becoming a food hunter?" Reo was stunned. He hadn't expected to get an invitation. "Huh? Me? I mean, I don't mind food hunters. But I'm more interested in exotic creatures." He thought that would be the end of it, that Menki would give up the idea. But instead. "Huh? You like exotic animals? That's perfect for a food hunter. You know how ideal it is to make those exotic beasts into delicious meals? That's basically the dream." Reo paused. That kind of made sense. But something about it still felt off. He decided to leave her with a vague answer for now. "I'll think about it. But for now, I'm not planning to become a food hunter." Menki didn't push. She simply nodded, pleased. Then came the sound of the gong again. Candidate number 406, Reo, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Meanwhile, Gon and the others had been watching Reo bring his sushi to Menki but hadn't seen him return for quite a while. They began to worry something had gone wrong. But the moment Menki made her announcement, they let out a collective sigh of relief. As Reo walked back, Gon and the others immediately started preparing their own sushi, determined to follow him in passing. Not far away, Hanzo was watching from a distance. He had already suspected that Reo was no ordinary examinee. Seeing him pass only confirmed it. Hanzo also knew that Rio's friends were likely to pass one after another, and if he didn't hurry up, he'd fall behind. With a renewed sense of urgency, Hanzo scrambled to make his sushi, but rushed preparation wasn't going to hold up against the others' efforts. Soon after, more announcements followed. Candidate number 403, Leorio, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 404, Kurapika, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 405, Gon Freaks, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 99, Killua Zoldyck, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. Candidate number 80, Lena, successfully passed the second test of the Hunter exam. The remaining candidates, damn, I'm so jealous. The more Hanzo listened, the worse he felt. He quickly brought his rushed sushi to Menki. But Menki glanced at the plate, frowned, and said flatly, "Nope. Take it back and redo it." Her blunt rejection rattled Hanzo. In a panic, he tried to explain himself. Wait. Isn't nigiri sushi just rice shaped into a long oval, with some wasabi on top and a slice of sashimi? It's supposed to be bite-sized, right? As soon as he said it, the room went quiet. Then a chorus of realization echoed through the crowd. Oh. That's how you make nigiri sushi. The other examinees turned to Hanzo, now fully convinced he did know what he was doing. Even Pakal, who had been ridiculed earlier, was fuming. I knew he knew the right way to do it. Pakal muttered, veins bulging on his forehead. From that point on, a line of desperate candidates presented Menki with plate after plate of poorly made sushi. Menki, stuck in her role as examiner, had to taste every last one. Eventually, she reached her limit. She slammed her chopsticks down, waved her hands at the crowd, and declared, "That's it, I'm full. Everyone else is disqualified." The room went silent. "What did you just say?" Someone shouted in disbelief. Menki, completely unfazed, twirled her finger. "I said, everyone I didn't announce earlier is not qualified." She snorted lightly at the uproar. The temperature in the room plummeted. One by one, examinees turned icy glares toward Menki, their anger simmering. Up in the tree, Satatsu, who had been watching the whole time, realized something was wrong. He sighed, pulled out his communicator, and made a call to the Hunter Association,